Throughout this week, I'm returning to some of the key scriptures that I mentioned in my sermon or in worship this past Sunday. And today it's Matthew 25. And because you have a little more time, you can look at all of it from verse 31 to verse 46 if you like, which Sunday we cut it off just after Jesus' response to the righteous. We didn't read what the response to those who are accursed, which isn't pretty. But this parable of the great judgment, it follows the parable of two other parables. The parable of the 10 bridesmaids, which is about being ready and being prepared for when the bridegroom, when the Son of Man returns. And then that is followed by the parable of the talents in Matthew 25, 14 to 30, which is all about being a trustworthy slave, a trustworthy servant, and putting to use whatever it is that the master has entrusted to us. And then verses 31 to 46 with this parable of the judgment of the nations, it's kind of a further amplification of the master's response to the three slaves in the parable of the talents, that there's going to be an account that we all have to give for our life. And as I mentioned in my sermon on Sunday, Judgment Day in this parable or this image comes with surprises on both sides. Everyone's surprised that they didn't recognize Christ, the Son of Man, in the least of these, in the hungry, the thirsty, the naked, the stranger, the sick, or those who were in prison. And this says something to us about how do we regard the people around us. Do we look at people with disdain? Do we look down our nose at people who are failures in our eyes? Or are we able to look with eyes of love and compassion and to see, how do I see Christ in every person I meet in front of me? No matter how together or successful they may look on the outside, or however needy they may look on the outside. Because there are also needs that are on the inside that may not be quite as evident to us. But in every case, in Matthew 25, with this fourfold repetition of, I was hungry and you gave me food, I was thirsty and you gave me something or nothing to drink, I was a stranger and you welcomed me, or you didn't. There's always this emphasis on sharing God's love and compassion in practical ways with those who need it. And while it's something that some of us struggle with, there is a notion in Matthew 25, in the parable of the great judgment, that there are eternal consequences for how we live our life and how we treat people on this earth. And there are some in verse 40 who are going to be eternally rewarded because we took care of the least of these who were members of God's family. But verse 46 says, these will go away into eternal punishment, those who did not act with justice and mercy and compassion and faith towards those who need it most, but the righteous will go into eternal life. We want to make sure, both by placing our trust in Jesus and living our life as much as possible as he would if he were in our shoes, that we hear words of affirmation on that day and not words of condemnation.